Thursday, March. And we're going to get this meeting started, but before we do, could we please stand for the pledge of allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, roll call, please.
Scott Mazaris, District 1.
Present.
Sue Hanson, District 2.
Here.
Sean Pond, District 3.
Here. All right. Manager, well, we don't have anything to remove from
Mr. Chair, no change.
Okay, we're going to start this, we're going to open up this, and we say as a regular, this is public hearing. We're opening this as a public hearing and in consideration of special use permit SU 24-003. And we're going to begin with our Planning and Development Director giving his presentation, to be followed by the applicant.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good evening, Commissioners. Can everyone hear me okay? Okay. Today we have a public hearing for a special use permit. The applicant proposes to construct and operate a telecommunications facility on an 8-acre parcel. Unfortunately, I don't have internet to my laptop, but it's highlighted on the screen, so the aerial imagery is not working super great. I'll try to find something else. The property is proposed to be located at is 37200 II Road in Redvale. It's proposed 150-foot lattice tower. It's proposed to be set back about 150 feet from the western property line and about 190 feet from the southern boundary. The master plan designates this area for agricultural, rural, residential. The master plan doesn't specifically designate certain areas for telecommunication facilities, but it does speak to guiding principles for special use permits, and including environmental impacts, traffic congestion, noise levels, things like that. So I think there's certainly arguments in the public comment how it does not meet the intent of the master plan. Staff position is that a properly permitted cell tower at this location would align with certain provisions in the master plan. The zoning regulations allow telecommunication facilities in the general ag district up to 150 feet maximum height as a special use permit in the general ag zone district. There are some certain use standards for those outlined in section 3. This proposal does meet all of those minimum standards. The proposed facility is surrounded by low-density residential uses and agricultural uses. The distance to the nearest residence in each direction is about 285 feet to the property owner's home to the east. To the south, about 245 feet, and then to the northwest, 400 feet. But obviously both of those are to adjacent property owners. In your staff report in front of you, I won't read through commentary, but there are 5 criteria that the VOCC should be considering when making a motion to approve or deny. The first is that the application complies with all requirements imposed by this code. The second is the application complies with all applicable laws and regulations. That would include state and federal laws. The third is that the proposed location of the use and proposed access to the site and the conditions under which the use will be operated or maintained will not be detrimental to public health, safety, or welfare, or materially injurious to the properties in the vicinity. Fourth is that it doesn't result in undue traffic congestion or traffic hazards. And the fifth is on and off-site impacts have been satisfactorily mitigated for the proposal. At the time the report was written, we received plenty of comment. That's in your packets. There's also 2 additional comments in front of you. This is a presentation submitted by the applicant, that I'm guessing they'll be presenting today. And then this is an additional letter from the State Historic Byway Council. So you should have those, and then the rest of the public comments in your packet. And Marty might touch on this a little better than I can, but you may recall, and Sue will recall this from previous hearings for cell towers, federal law prevents local decisions based directly or indirectly on environmental effects of radio frequency emissions, assuming the provider is in compliance with all FCC regulations. So back to one of those criteria of the public safety, that's speaking to the physical tower itself, as opposed to the radio frequency emissions. Another important thing for the board to know, there is a 150-day shot clock on these applications for cell towers. The applicant was agreeable to extending that. Obviously, this meeting has been postponed a couple times. The extension and the shot clock will expire March 26th, so that's next week. That's including the 45-day extension that the applicant was agreeable to. Before I get to that point, the page 4 of the staff report, again, I won't go through it, I won't bore you all with that, but there's some typical conditions of approval if the board so chooses to approve that would be associated with the approval that the applicant would be responsible to adhere to that can potentially mitigate negative impacts. And then finally, the Planning Commission recommends denial of the proposal. They base that denial on the fact that it was adjacent to a scenic byway, and that doesn't support the master plan. I have been in touch with CDOT and the Byway Council. Again, the Byway Council has submitted their comments and their recommendation, and then CDOT's comments are also in there. They don't, they submitted comments that basically stated they don't have any regulations or any required setbacks for development on scenic byway. And a member of CDOT mentioned that a tower at this location would improve their communication abilities as they currently struggle in that Redvale area. I believe that's all I have for you at this time, unless you have any questions.
I think what we'll do is we'll hear from the applicant, and they will have some public comment, and then we'll entertain some questions once everybody gets everybody's.
Mr. Chair, if you want, I'm able to get internet on my computer, and if you give me a second, I think I pull it up on there, if you want.
Is the applicant, where's the applicant? Right there? We're going to try to get internet for you. You can make yourself comfortable off the podium.
Yeah, thanks so much. Sorry I was late. I went to the new community center first.
While he's doing that, would you just please state your name and who you're representing here?
Sure. Hi, my name is Mike Powers. I'm a representative of the applicant, which is Atlas Tower 1 LLC, Tower Co., which is also working in tandem currently with Verizon Wireless. Our address is 2500 30th Street, Boulder, Colorado.
I think we're good to go.
Just a sort of a housekeeping issue. I have a PowerPoint that I think Talmadge already has. And
We passed it up to the commissioners.
okay, so I think in the interest of not doing it twice, am I going to introduce the PowerPoint, or is that something that you?
I guess that's up to you. If we have it ready, if you want to present them.
Yeah, sure. So yeah, if you could put it on the screen, that'd be great, I guess. Okay, so that's just the cover page. Next, please. Just going to get into some overarching information. This site name was given Redvale. The proposal is for a 150-foot galvanized steel supporting tower located at the intersection of Highway 145 and Road 2. The zoning code there is agricultural. Next. So basically, there is on this slide a description of what we're trying to do here. I just want to talk off the slide for a moment and just tell you that Atlas Tower is a tower code. And what that means is we work in tandem with the mobile network operators, in this case Verizon, but we also work with T-Mobile, AT&T, Dish, etc., to provide the physical communication infrastructure, not the technology. And typically how this works is the carrier, in this case Verizon, has come to Atlas and stated that they have a network issue in a specific area. And what they did was they basically, this is a standard process, where they took a circle on a map and said, if we can get the infrastructure within this circle on the map, then that will work for us to fix our network problems. So based on that circle, we then had to feather in several other restricting items. One is obviously important to the community, which is zoning. So in the agricultural zone, this type of use is allowed. We also had to make sure that we could find a willing landowner, because obviously this is going to be on somebody's land. And then we also had to make sure that there were certain other pieces of infrastructure like power and fiber. So with those parameters, we did a pretty diligent search of the area and identified this specific location. The goal from Verizon stated is they're trying to provide reliable LTE and 5G connectivity to Redvale, and basically the height that they needed was identified to be 150 feet. I'm not going to make you wait until the end of the hearing to tell you this, but I have been aggressively negotiating with Verizon based on some of the community concern about the project. And it is possible, not infinitely, but it is possible to make the tower a little bit shorter. I'll circle back to that as a condition of approval, because there aren't very many things I can do to make this community happier with the project if you're just not happy about it. But anyway, we'll get back to that in a bit. But that is one thing I wanted to highlight. During the last two hearings with P&Z and a lot of questions and answers from the community, there was a twofold discussion about the nearby internet tower. It's a 100-foot pole, probably, I just drove it, it's like less than a mile from the proposed location for this tower. That tower was extensively vetted to see if it would be a co-locatable structure for Verizon. For several structural needs, it was concluded that that tower would not actually meet. It's unfortunate because had that tower been forced by the county when it was originally permitted to be co-locatable for real with actual structural integrity to allow us to put Verizon on that tower, they would have gone there. So that's one thing. I just wanted to make sure that everyone knows that we're not wanting to build a new tower. There isn't a structure in this area where the network needs to be fixed that is available right now. So we don't have an option. The second conversation was about, there was some interesting dialogue from the community and people that know stuff about your community that I don't, and it was a discussion point that the existing Wi-Fi tower was a roaming partner for Verizon. I had several conversations with the T-Mobile team, Verizon team, that they are actually housed in Utah, and they are not aware of an existing roaming agreement. Their comments were, Verizon is not aware of an existing roaming agreement for that wireless facility near the new Naturita Tower, and if one did exist, that would only highlight the saturation issue that is previously anticipated. It would mean that Verizon's current working resources, and in addition to any roaming that would exist if it was roaming, is not enough to handle the sheer amount of data that the community is consuming. Network reliability performance is not just impacted by the number of towers in the coverage area, the saturation of the towers in the area is equally impacted. The only way to alleviate the saturation is to add additional access points in the network, and in this case, by putting antennas on a tower. So that was the comment I wanted to highlight on that one specific topic point that was discussed earlier, planning and zoning here. So you can go to the next page, please. Here you see Verizon's current coverage, and not only, so just to make this simple, red's bad, it's coverage. There's some kind of connectivity to their network, but it is not very good. Green would be good. So that's the existing coverage. The next slide will show you proposed coverage. I guess they didn't use green, sorry. So that is showing the actual coverage. So as you can see, the before and after if this project was approved is going to bring substantial new coverage and enhanced connectivity for data throughout a big swath of this part of your county. Next slide. This is just I'm repeating a bit, sorry, because I was talking off the slides, but I do want to emphasize that in our search, in in Atlas's due diligence before coming to the county to ask for this permit to be approved, we made sure we met your code. We meet your code. This is a legal, regular piece of infrastructure that all communities have, and we're not asking for any variance from any of your rules or regulations. And so we just wanted to make sure that the commissioners understood that was our first goal, was to meet the regulations that exist in this county. Next slide. So this is going to be the slide about the historic byway, and it's particularly important because the planning and zoning folks had a concern about that. And quite frankly, it's a little bit, there's a story here. and I can read the slide after I give you the off-the-cuff sort of summary. And that is that most scenic byways are designated by the federal government. The federal government has a program whereby a lot of state or federal roads, in Colorado go through a program, and they are designated with the I don't know, in tandem with the local government, they designate certain roads to be scenic highways. And then the state of Colorado also has a program which is different from the federal program, although in the end they're doing the same thing. So there is a state scenic byway program, which to my knowledge is generally regulated through or designated through the Department of Transportation. Okay, so Atlas Tower, going through all of our federal regulation compliance and due diligence, Atlas Tower utilized a company called Tri-Leaf Corporation to help us with the National Environmental Policy Act portion of the compliance. And the word national makes it sound like it's all federal law, but it's not, because when you go through this process, the National Environmental Policy Act requires the consultants who are working for Atlas and Verizon to consult with DOT and state historic preservation offices. So during that consultation with these two different scenic byway entities, what we learned is as follows. Basically, Tri-Leaf conducted a cultural resources survey for the proposed communications project that we're talking about. The Tri-Leaf archaeologists determined that there was no National Register eligible or listed archaeological sites, historic sites, or properties recorded within an area of potential effects. They also, while studying a segment of the Uinta-Watauga-Wash scenic byways, they saw that this was listed in that area, but the consultation with the federal program, people that run the federal program, basically said this project area does not align with the scenic attributes for which the byway is recognized. The area is flat, sparsely populated, residential and agriculture, and it lacks the geological forms, petroglyphs, canyons, vertical walls that contribute to the byway's scenic historic significance. Consequently, this tower's construction will not adversely impact the experience of driving along the byway. Furthermore, that the applicant solicits responses from SHPO, that's the State Historic Preservation Office, which also goes under the name History Colorado. And the History Colorado basically provided us this statement of no impact. Based on the documentation we were given, we agree with your Tri-Leaf finding that the undertaking will have no historic properties affected. So that's what we have for our best and honest search about what's going on with scenic byways generally in this community and also in that specific location. And I have been to this specific location after driving through the most awesome road in Colorado, I would say, on 145 today. Those are two different animals. Where we're proposing a tower is very much an ordinary agricultural and residential area. I could count 24 utility poles without actually trying, just circling in one place and counting the number of poles I can find there. There isn't, this is an area where another pole is not going to be destroying a pristine view. It's going to be more in tandem with what farmers and agricultural sites look like, which is, at the end of the day, somewhat of a commercial activity. Next page, this is the project proposal. It's probably not worth talking about now, but if people have specific questions about distances or where the electrical are or how the electrical boxes or other components might be put into this space, we could circle back to that. Next, I have a project overhead, which right now shows that we have designed this site, if built, to be able to hold no less than 4 carriers. So we're committed to putting enough concrete in the ground and making sure the structural limits of the tower itself can allow this tower to be co-locatable, which is part of the Montrose Code. And what that really means is that once, if this project is approved, then Verizon will go on immediately. Other network operators, so it could be AT&T, it could be T-Mobile, it could be your first responders, it could be fire, it could be all sorts of users of wireless communication, would have the ability to use this spot for the community for many, many, many different uses. And Montrose County Code would allow you to more or less force them to use the tower or prove that it isn't possible for their use to be co-located on the structure. And so we're doing our best to make sure that if this was approved, this would essentially make sure that there weren't more tower applications in this area for a long time. Next page, these are photo sims. And so basically it is an engineered document, but it's a little bit of art. They take a photo and then they use math to try to replicate what the tower would look like.
So whose back door is that from?
I think there's a.
Not my front door, I can tell you that.
Hold on.
So to answer your question, the next slide shows where the pictures were taken in reference to the tower. So if you want, maybe we could get you a copy of this so you could see exactly where the photos were taken
There
from.
certainly is taken from anybody's backyard.
If we could.
I'm sorry.
Let's let him finish the thing, and then we'll have the opportunity to address questions. Just keep them in your mind or write them down.
Appreciate that, and I'm happy to stay here all night answering questions. So then there's another set of photo sims on the next page. And then there's I kind of started with the slide, well, how did we get here? I do have a few other comments, just to try to summarize the planning and zoning hearings, which were long. There were a lot of people that had concerns and questions, and I think we probably dedicated at least more than 5 hours of all of our lives for this. I appreciate the comments. But I do echo your planner's comment, which is that if you make a decision tonight that's based on a concern about the RF technology being a problem for human health, you would be wandering into a jurisdiction, just subject matter jurisdiction, that could actually have some consequences in terms of overturning your decision. But with that said, I think I know a lot. I've been in this industry for 17 years, and I have a few comments that I know to be true. And number one is, this industry is highly regulated. There's a lot of kooky stuff on the internet, but all of the technology that's used for commercial use is pursuant to a license from the FCC. And that license, basically, that license requires them to follow a lot of very stringent rules. Not only like where is the equipment located or what kind of equipment are you using, but also, oh, is that is this new technology? Is this a different frequency? Is this being used in a place that's low to the ground, or is it being used? Is the antennas being way up in the high on top of a tower? All of those things are regulated, and so I just want to make sure that at a minimum we all agree that this isn't the Wild West. You can't be Verizon and just put a tower anywhere, or change the wattage, or do something else that isn't already been studied and regulated through the FCC. Second thing I want to say was there's a lot of confusion about what the 1996 Telecommunication Act is. There's a lot of stuff on the internet that says that the FCC hasn't tested anything different for the last, whatever that would be, 28 years. The 1996 Telecommunication Act is kind of like the Constitution for telecom, in that it requires certain things over time. One of the things it requires over time is that all of this equipment both be licensed to a commercial user that is going to do the right thing, and the equipment itself, before it is manufactured, fixed to a surface and turned on, all of that is regulated. So you might have questions, concerns, disbelief, but I just want to just put it on the record that this is a regulated industry, and it has deemed to be safe. And I'd rather not spend the next 4 hours arguing about that. But I'm happy to talk more, whatever the commission thinks is appropriate. I'm okay with that. With that, I think I'm going to stop there because I'm not really sure what what the commission's really going to want to work through in terms of figuring out what you need to know to make a decision. And at one point, I would like to talk about potentially lowering tower height, if that was amenable to the commission and something that the community thought was a benefit.
Thank you, Mike.
Thank you. I appreciate the time.
Excuse me? Oh, he said get into the height, the tower height. We'll do that in question and answer. Okay, so now it's time for public comment. We have a sign-up sheet here. Is anybody not signed up that wants to comment? Okay, just give me your first name and I'll write it down.
Kate.
Excuse me?
Kate, K-A-T-E.
Thank you, Kate. Okay, so our comments, we're going to try to limit our comments to 3 minutes if we can, and you're going to hear a sound from the telephone to let you know where you're at. And if you hear that sound, please finish your sentence and thought, and then give someone else a chance to speak. And try to keep your comments respectful and not personal or anything like that. Just state your case on the facts or the way you see them. So Hack Reed. Hack, come on up, please. Oh, yeah. And Hack, can you get up here, state your name and your address, please?
My name is Hack Reed. I live at 37015 Highway 145 in Redvale. Okay.
You ready? Okay.
I wanted to ask basically about the scenic byway thing. It sounds to me like he's saying that it stops somewhere after you get past Urban, where the cliffs and all the petroglyphs and stuff like that are at. If that's the case, that's not good, I don't think. Because are you gonna put a sign up there and say that's the end of the scenic byway? Or are you gonna keep fooling people that they're traveling the scenic byway all the way to Telluride? You know, that's the thing. you know, somewhere along the line here, we gotta get some honesty going. You know? The other thing that I have to say is I understand that you can't say anything about the EMFs. You can't make your decision based on EMFs. But I don't see any real current study based on EMFs that have come out since they started, basically, at the beginning, you know, 4G. Is there any studies on 4G? I don't think so. Not here. There is in Europe. You know, I just don't think it's right that they're allowed to put a tower. Sure, it's agricultural, but they picked a place where there's five or six homes right there and put the tower right in the middle of it. Pick a 40-acre spot and go out there and put it out there.
Yeah.
You'll get it away from people,
Yeah.
so we don't sit on our back patio. I'm gonna sit on my back patio, and when I look at the Uncompahgre, what I'm gonna see is that tower. I don't give a damn if it's 10 foot tall. You know, that's 200 and some odd feet away from my back patio. That's not good. If I go to sell my house, real estate says that there is the potential of up to a 20% drop in your resale value. You know, these are not cookie cutter houses that are right around there. It would be different if it's a little complex or apartments or something like that. It's not. You know, and I don't know what you guys think about it, but if you had a $700,000 house, if you took a 20% decrease on selling that, you wouldn't like it. So, that's all I gotta say. You know, we gotta check our moral compass here, folks.
Thank you, Pat. Tina, you're up next. Please state your name and your address.
Questions for the applicant, will be addressed at a later time?
We're gonna have a question period after, okay. Okay. Pass us along questions if you want to write them down, and we'll ask the applicant. We're gonna do the public comment, and then we'll give the applicant a chance to rebuttal against, you know, whatever points that the testimony or.
My name's Tina Reed. I live at 37015 Highway 145 in Redvale, Colorado. With that guy in the house to the west of where the proposed tower is supposed to be. We came here to Redvale to retire 5 years ago. And we came because of the scenery, because how peaceful it is, how pristine the views are and things like that. And we have a garden, we have an orchard, we have the place fixed up the way that we want it right now. And to have this tower right there in our face all the time it's gonna mess with our peace. You know, we want to live our life in peace and you know, we have animals in our yards, we have birds in the trees, and just, you know, it's a beautiful place to live, and putting an eyesore like that is just not right. Not when there are many other places to be putting something like that. The last meeting, there were several other options that they would be able to use if they wanted to, you know, but I don't know, it's just really a bad idea.
Bless you.
That's all I can say. I'm not an activist or anything like that. I'm just really concerned because we have our neighbors all here, and, you know, we're concerned about our neighbors and our friends and our family. We have 2 of our family members that live in Redvale too, so, you know, we want to take care of our people. Anyway, thank you for your time.
Thank you. Okay, Brian Reed.
My name is Brian Reed. I live at 37105 County Road I, which is going to be basically due northwest of where the tower is going to be. And right now, I'm going to ask the man that is representing the Atlas Towers. He said, you know, you got to trust people. Well, I was born and raised in this country. This country was founded by pretty much Union Carbide uranium mines in Montrose, Colorado. All based out of a little town called Durban, Colorado. We were all of us were told, no problem, go ahead and live there. Had a swimming pool there. My mother taught swimming lessons there. I took I took lessons there. Tons of kids, tons of people took lessons there. We were all told it's fine. I watched my sister die of cancer. I sustained 11 and a half hours worth of surgery for cancer. Watched my mom die of cancer. I'm not saying it come from Yerevan, Colorado, but I sure find it funny that Yerevan, Colorado no longer exists. So I ask you to keep that in mind when you make your decision. We've been told all of our lives that things ain't bad for you. But 30, 40 years down the road, we find out that they are. Johnson Mansfield told people asbestos wasn't bad for people. Turned out they knew for almost 60 years that it would kill people. I'm asking you to use your moral compass. The fact that the United States has not done one study about this radiation is amazing, but yet they're throwing it all down our throats. Please use your moral compass, folks. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, next up, Rebecca Rogers, please.
My name is Rebecca Rogers. I live at 741 42 ZS Road, south of Norwood, Colorado, and I am the president of the Redvale Community Building, as well as the president of the Youth Trail Study Club, and we are the keepers of the local history. I represent a lot of people from Redvale. They're all my friends. Not a one of them has wanted this tower. We all have dead areas in our travel area around here with our cell service. We're all used to it. If Verizon doesn't work for you, go for another entity. I have Consumer Cellular. It works everywhere across the nation, including Naturita, Redvale, Nucla, Norwood. We also have AT&T. We have a huge AT&T tower in Norwood. And then I also wondered if this tower were to go up in Redvale. I remember hearing that there was a 5-mile radius that it would cover. 5 miles to the south are the oil and gas fields. 5 miles to the west is not even Naturita. There's just a few homes scattered between Redvale and Naturita. And I'm sure those folks already have cell service. 5 miles to the north would be the Uncompahgre Plateau with a few hunting camps and whatnot that may be serviced. Let's see, 5 miles to the west or to the east would be more scattered homes, but hardly any between Redvale and Norwood. And they all have perfectly fine cell service already. And not only that, but this is going in a neighborhood, literally a neighborhood. It doesn't matter if it's 150 feet from their home. They're sitting on their back porch looking at a cell tower. It's very wrong. Every one of these people that live in those 13 residences that can view this are put at a disadvantage in their lives. Like Tina said, they've retired here for the beauty of the area. And as far as the scenic byway goes, it does go right through Redvale, and yes, it does impact our vision when we come up over that hill and we look out at the San Juan Mountains, and there's a cell tower. And you know what else? We give them an inch, and they'll take a mile. We let them have a cell tower in Redvale, next thing you know, they're putting one 5 miles down the road, and 5 miles down the road, and 5 miles down the road. We are used to dead spots around here. It's part of life living in this area. Cell towers are not part of our life. We do with what we have around here, and I haven't talked to anyone in Redvale, and there was one person who accepted it. Every one of these Redvale people got a notice in the mail with a request for $25,000 and between $400 and $900 a month in perpetuity. However, there was only one person that responded in the whole town. So what does that tell you?
Sorry,
Okay.
sorry.
All right.
I didn't mean for it to be that.
Is it 3 minutes? Am I done?
You mean it, don't you?
Is that 3 minutes?
I think
Okay.
you're up.
All right, well, you got my point.
Thank you, Rebecca. Cindy Reed, please.
My name is Cindy Reed. I live at 37105 County Road II in Redvale, Colorado. Brian's my husband. That cell tower, we look out our front yard and sit on our front patio. We have a waterfall, we got a fire pit, and we're gonna have a cell tower. Our home is for sale because of this cell tower. Our home is for sale and it's gonna take a loss of 7 to 20%. It's a $775,000 property. Who's gonna make up that for me? Be careful what you read on the internet. Really? Be careful what you read on the internet? Tell me when the United States did a 5G study on humans. When?
I don't think it's my time for a talk, so.
They haven't. They have not done 5G studies. Do you remember when they wanted to turn it on? The airlines, they were all worried the airplanes were gonna fall out of the sky. Do you remember it had to go section by section and they checked and double checked and rechecked? I remember. In 20 years, when all these people in Redvale have cancer, who's gonna pay for their medical bills? Are we gonna wait 20 years to find out that's what's gonna happen? If you look at the United Kingdom, they did a study in February of 2024. Over 70% of animals and plant life were affected within a 500-yard radius of a 5G tower. It affected the animal population, it affected the tree population and the plant population. How long has 5G been here, guys? What, 5, 6, 7 years? Not even.
2 years.
So, okay, so they've done a study? They've done a study on the effects of human health. I don't believe they have. I don't believe they have. That's not fair to us. That's not fair to anybody. That's not fair to anybody. 500 yards, that was their perimeter. I'm about 160 feet. That's all I got to say.
Thank you, Cindy. Is this Victoria Allen? Victoria? No comment, you're gonna. And Turin Richardson, please. Turin?
Hi, I'm Terry Richardson. I own the property just in between Brian and there too, so 37089 County Road II. So kind of got to give it a different little spin off of different things than what they've already presented to you. I've actually contacted some other people that were interested, and they're 1.75 miles away, higher elevation, 50 feet more, so if the tower goes down from 150 to that could be a potential over there. But I don't think that this lady was not reached out to because she doesn't have the power there. I've talked to some other people that have put in these cell phone towers, Grayhead, top of Dallas. They have repeaters that this satellite can connect to, and then they have generators that sit there and can power them too. So this needing to be right by power, that just doesn't, it can be done. There's other options. Yeah, not used to this. This is the first time getting up, so. Property tax. So if our properties lose their value because of this, is Montrose County got to give us a break on our taxes? Is he getting this $1.5+ million tower? Is he going to have his property tax increase? I think that's a fair deal. We're the ones that have got to lose and this individual's gaining. So think about that. Thank you.
Thank you, Tate. Kate? You state your full name and your address? I just have Kate for it.
Actually, I used to live at 36783, I believe. It's right on that corner. The house right on that corner. I lived there for 10 years. I had rights.
Can I get your first and last name?
Kate Gray.
Greg?
Uh-huh. Can I get your current address? Currently I'm living in Naturita. That's just an address.
A street address, yeah.
220 East Main Street. In Naturita. Anyways, I used to live right on that, right as that corner goes in that house. Sold 2 years ago. We had Verizon. We had no problems with Verizon. I still have Verizon. So I'm struggling with, the fact that there's no service there.
Thank you, Kate. Are there any other people out there who would like to give testimony before we close out the public comment? Anybody? Please come up to the podium, state your name. Name and address, please.
Jane Thompson, 123 Grand Avenue in Newport.
God bless you.
One of the questions that I would like for you to ask this gentleman is, did they get in touch with the local history? He said there's really no history, anything historical there. I would like to know who they asked that question to. The tower that's about to go up in Nukla, the archaeologist that came from Tucson, Arizona, to check out if we had any history there. And turned out nobody thought to ask the local historical society. I could find you a lot of history on what has been in Redvale, and I would be happy to do that for any of you that need it. And the other thing is, I am on the board of the byway committee for the local byway, and we did write a letter of support for our neighbors that, and you cannot say that a cliff outside of your van is any more beautiful than a hayfield and the Uncompahgre in Redvale. That's an insult.
Yep.
So, I'm fighting this battle in Nukla. The 100-foot tower is being put in directly across the street from my house, and nobody on the town board of Nukla told anybody that it was happening. I didn't get to sit and talk to anybody. I didn't get to give any input. I would say that I have already, if that tower goes in, I will have lost my down payment, so I know exactly how these people feel. But you know what? I don't have a big fancy home. It was easy for them to say, it's only Jane, it's only a little single-wide trailer over there with a nice little garage. The garage is probably nicer than the trailer, but it is my home. I thought it would be my forever home. I'm there for the views, I'm there for the quiet, I'm there to watch the deer come in and try to find something to eat. And I am extremely unhappy that that has happened to me. Don't let that happen to these people. There are plenty of places up in the hills, where they can put this. But there's your key word. It's so much easier if the power's already there. And it's so much easier if they can get into somebody's fiber. And whose fiber are they going to get into? Clear Networks. There you go. That tells you a lot. Save a new plug. That tower is going to go straight into Clear Networks. So please don't do this to these people.
Thank you, Jane.
And I'd love to share history with anybody who wants it.
It's okay with that. Anybody else? Yes, sir.
First, I want to apologize for not
signing up on that paper. Just give us your name and your address if you would, so I can make a note.
I'm Stanley Riva, 37340 II Road. I own the property just directly east of the driveway that accesses the residence where the tower goes, and just across the road to the north from the proposed tower. First of all, to give you a little bit of history, I'm the 4th generation of agriculture on that place. And my concern is, after all these years and whatnot, how much is that going to impact me financially, commitment, and otherwise? We've already talked about real estate values going down. Secondly, when they put the tower in Norwood, it was a different company, and the existing company up there that had access on it, the new provider destroyed the existing facilities or the existing communication facility. Cost them a lot of money. They had to repair some of their equipment because that destroyed it. And how much is this going to affect me is what I'm leading to is I've got good cell service right now. If we put the tower in, is that going to defeat my existing service that I've got now that I want to keep? Is that going to cause me a hardship financially? And for my business, as far as communication and whatnot, how's that going to affect me? Am I going to have an increased rate that I'm forced into, that I don't have a choice of? I don't think that's right. Not where you 4th generation, and you're having this modernization type thing that's going to directly impact me big time. Or potentially. And it has been proven that it has by the existing tower that's in Norwood when they put that one in. And secondly, that's going to impact us because of where we live, right east of it. We enjoy the sunsets on the LaSalle immensely so. How's that going to affect our enjoyment of scenery? Because you got a beautiful sunset there. But there's no scenic byways of a farm or silo or anything that complements the sunset. A tower right in the middle of it is not going to be complimentary.
Thank you.
That's all I have, thank you.
Thank you, Stan. Anybody else before we move on to let Mr. Bob, you want to come up? Come on up, Jan. Please state your name and your address, full name, please.
Erling Antonelli, I live at New Cliff, 25367 Z26 Road. I have property, 7 acres in Redvale that could be impacted. I kind of think outside the box, and I'm wondering if this tower is really about Verizon, or if you can lease it to multiple people, correct, and make money. They use the tower, and I'm wondering who will be leasing the tower, what entities, and what their effect. Will that be known by us, or will that be their private business? I don't think it's about the phone company. I think it's about putting tower up and making money and having somebody use it, and we won't know how or what will be in there. So, I'm not picking on you personally,
I appreciate that.
but you do make money
Sure.
by leasing it, and I think that's the whole thing, because people around here may just quit taking Verizon if they get mad. We have other phones, it's next to a highway, and, it just makes me real nervous. All right.
Thank you.
No, thank you.
Is there anybody else before we allow Mr. Power to respond to some of your concerns? Or your concerns?
I appreciate the opportunity. If I skip a question at the end, they remind me that I did take notes. So, I'm not going to win an argument about EMF. But again, this is a federally regulated technology. It is studied. It is tested. It goes through rigorous processes before the technology can be used in a commercial way. And that's probably all I can say about that, because I am not an expert. But I can say that there is a lot of, unfortunately, a lot of fear about health, and I get that. Here's one thing I can tell you that I know, because I've been reading publications and things for more than a decade now, because I'm in the industry. And here's what I see. The World Health Organization, the American Cancer Society, the FCC's own specialist body that is retained to figure out if new technology is safe for humans, have almost all moved away from the macro site RF signature, if you will, and they've mostly honed in on basically the handset. So let me explain. When you have a tower up high on 100 feet up above the ground or whatever, the antennas that are creating a signal for the handsets to talk to, it is not designed to go in like a snow globe in every direction. In fact, the engineers designed that signature of the antennas to go mostly on a horizontal plane at the height of the tower, usually much higher than humans are walking around, and allowing that plane to service the people that are way below those antennas at a very low parts per million wattage. Right now, the FCC's parts, I'm not an expert, but the FCC has been using the 1.7 watt standard for all of their testing for a long time. And that allows them to compare things from other things, etc. But to my point, what I really wanted to get to is most of the people that are really smart and they're studying this, most of the journal entries and studies are really honing in on the handset. So here's the deal. If you have a town with 2 towers and 1,000 people, and all of a sudden everyone's using the towers and overloading the network because there's only 2 towers in this one town, what happens is you find that the handsets are struggling to connect to the towers, and the handsets actually are using variable amplifiers and receivers in order to get into the signal.
No.
It is true.
No, that is not true.
No, it actually is
It
true.
is not true.
If you're 10 miles from a tower, the equipment has to work at a higher wattage than it would if you were half a mile away. And the handsets literally try to use the least amount of wattage needed in order to connect to the tower. And so if you're in an area where you have bad coverage, holding this to your head is theoretically at least worse than being downtown Denver where their antennas within 100 feet of you. I know I can't convince anyone of this, but this is what I'm reading. Secondly, there's kind of a big misunderstanding about where the tower can go. And again, you don't have to believe me, but this is how the industry works. The mobile network operator is basically managing a huge network. And they have lots of problems all over the place. And they have budgets and they try to fix places where there are problems. Sometimes there are problems, network problems, that you could live in the community and not know. Because a lot of times today, the network problem isn't making a phone call, it's data throughput. Sorry, I can't say that. And so, all I can tell you, well, I could talk a lot about this, but I can tell you with certainty that Verizon has a network issue that can be fixed by putting antennas somewhat in this area. But the place where they can put the tower isn't infinite. It doesn't work to fix this network problem to go 5 miles away. They gave us a search ring. The search ring was where the technical fix could be created. And if we couldn't get a site within that circle, they're just not going to fix that problem. Because they can't fix it by building a tower 5 miles away. The second thing I wanted to say was that it is super frustrating. I'm sure when people say, oh, this tower is going to service a radius of 5 miles. It's true and it's not true. In other words, data is not going to go 5 miles and be effective for the user in sort of a functional way. Because it's too far away, and there's going to be interference and other issues. But yeah, you'll get a phone call. So Verizon is trying to fix both a coverage problem and like basically a data problem. Okay, I'll get to that. But in any event, I can say on the record, absolutely true. The location was studied vigorously by Verizon, and we were told this general area is where it can be. And they said, if we go out of the circle, it's not going to work. So I wish we could go 5 miles away somewhere else. And my last comment in this sort of vein is that basically they're trying to connect people where they live and where they work and where their kids go to school, and it doesn't work if the infrastructure is 5 miles away. So that was just trying to respond to the first comment. Second comment was concern about gardens and orchards and animals. I love my garden and my animals and my kids. I don't believe there's an issue. I can't discount your concern, but I don't think there are any real studies that say that RF propagation is doing something to. I'm sure there's something out there that doesn't make any sense. That's not true.
Let's just try to keep it.
Sure. Sorry. Brian Reed, that was rough. I'm so sorry what's happening to your family with cancer. I have nothing but.
I don't know, I just have a question for you.
Yeah.
Do you have one in your backyard?
Yeah, actually I have two.
Do you?
Yeah, in my backyard I can see the NOAA tower, and I can also see.
Within 500 yards, you do?
No, I can see it.
No,
I didn't say 500
yards. You don't?
I live in Boulders. Towers antennas everywhere.
Appreciate it. We'll ask. We have some questions.
I'm just doing my part. This isn't personal for me, and I hope it's not personal for you in terms of what I'm saying, because that's not what I'm trying to do here. I do feel very badly about your family. My only other comment is RF propagation is not radiation. Those are two totally scientific things. They're not the same. Next comment was history with Rebecca. Rebecca, I'm sorry you weren't consulted, but there is a process through the National Environmental Policy Act when you consult with the State Historic Preservation Office, and our consultants did what they were required to do by law. There are state historic preservation officers that are registered apparently with the federal government, and the consultants call them to get input about history before a site is cleared for state historic preservation. And that was done. And it was done without consulting you, but they can't consult everyone, and I don't know how you get on the list and all that. It's the government, sorry. Next comment was 5 miles away. I already talked about that. The airplanes is an interesting one. When 5G was turned on, in the very beginning, what was discovered was that the FAA had licensed certain specific runway equipment to use frequencies that were not overlapping but very close to some of the 5G antenna send and receive chips. And what they discovered was the specific equipment, as I understood it, is some runways, and most serious commercial airplane runways have essentially an auto land. So they have technology on the runway that connects to the pilot's cockpit, and they can literally just click into that, and that system allows them to get basically like help landing the aircraft. And apparently, in the early days, they found that some of that equipment that was on the runways was bleeding over their allowed frequency to adjacent frequency, and that was causing problems. And that's been fixed. So that's what I know about that. Next one, satellites and power. Atlas doesn't care where the power is. If it's a mile away, we sold some more money. If it's shorter, it's not a driving factor in locating a tower or trying to locate a tower. Satellites sound awesome. We're not there yet. Maybe this satellite technology is going to totally take over the art industry. We'll be taking towers off because your county will be either defunct, get rid of it. But we're not there yet. So satellite technology has a lot of issues, mostly with latency and also issues with atmospheric conditions. No surprise. We'll see. That's new technology. It's not here yet. Taxes. Yeah, Verizon's going to pay tax. Atlas is going to pay tax. And the landowner's going to pay tax. I mean, that's just how it is. And maybe that's a good jump to just saying like it is. Yeah, it's a business. But we all do something commercial to make a livelihood. I mean, if I was here trying to get a permit for an Indian restaurant, I mean, I'd be doing something for the community because somebody in your town must like Indian food, but also trying to make a living. So I don't hide anything. If you guys want to talk about money, I can tell you what the average rent is, what the average cost of these sites are. I can't tell you what Verizon makes, but I can tell you for sure that most of the time when I'm trying to develop sites for any of the carriers, they're not trying to get new customers. They're trying to fix their network. Think about it this way. If you're Verizon, you have this billion-dollar network that's huge. It's constantly either out of date and needs to be better, so it needs an improvement, or people are wanting to use the network in a place where they don't have the infrastructure. They can never catch up. They're always spending money building new infrastructure to try to keep up. And so when I see a site come across my desk in Verizon, the folks you talk to are in Salt Lake City, they're always talking about we have a network problem. They never say, we're gonna make $10,000 a day by building this tower. That's not how the network evolves. But yeah, sure, it is a business and they make money. And if you don't wanna spend money for Verizon, use another carrier. But well, the county also can't say that you already have a Indian restaurant in town, so we can't have another one. I mean, Verizon's got it right. This is a legal business. They meet your code. Your code tells us what we have to do to get permitted, and we've done everything. You can't say, oh, AT&T works, so if you want to use a phone in this town, you have to deal with it. Verizon's got a right to do this. It's legal activity.
Who requested it? What brought you here?
Again, for
Verizon.
Verizon.
Nobody here wants
For, okay, no one here. This is a small subset of.
Kate has Verizon, and she has perfect service.
I mean, good service like this.
I'm sorry. I can't argue. All I can do is try to answer questions.
We're getting a little out of order.
And I'm just
I realize
saying-
this is emotional.
You asked how does it happen?
Yeah.
Verizon's got a network. They're trying to manage their network. They have a problem in this area, and so they went through a process that I described earlier to try to fix the process.
Okay.
What happens next is largely in the hands of the commissioners.
So it wasn't of the people.
Mr. Chair, would you mind?
I don't-
Mr.
no
Powers,
business works that way.
Mr. Powers, I think it's most appropriate if you direct your response.
Okay, yeah, thank you. I'm sorry. I shouldn't have done that. It's hard because this
Sorry,
community,
this is my
I want to
first
talk to
time
the
on this.
community.
But I
Sorry.
appreciate your concern, and give us a chance to ask him some questions, and maybe your questions will be
Okay.
satisfied.
And then the last gentleman asked questions about interference and rates. So interference is interesting because it's another heavily regulated thing. All of the license holders for RF propagation, so not just, again, it's going to be the airplanes and the runways and T-Mobile and everyone who uses this technology, they're all required by the FCC to have agreements and follow the law when there is interference. Interference is generally not a problem, but it does happen. And there's a protocol. The protocol is pretty simple in theory. If there is an interference issue, the equipment that is known to have created the interference is required to shut down within 24 hours. And then there's a time by which, the technicians figure out why it's happening. And if they can't have both pieces of equipment nearby because of an interference issue, the first, the earlier user of the frequencies at that location win. So if there is interference, there's a way to fix that. It's very unusual. If it does happen, they'll fix it. And then the second question was property values. I mean, I used to have a rental house, my first house with my wife bought way out in the woods. And when we moved, we decided to rent the house because I really wanted to go back. It was a really hard time renting the house because it didn't have self-service. So self-service is both perhaps a demerit for some and an advantage to others. It's not just a one-way street. And the county can't do zoning. Zoning couldn't exist if the county was required to make sure that every new thing that was permitted was going to make the adjacent properties or assets more valuable. It just doesn't work. That's not how it is. I hate to end on that, but that was the last comment, so I'm going to stop there.
We'll move into the section of this where we get questions from our commissioners. Who wants to go first?
And Mr. Chair, sorry to interrupt you. This was submitted by Mr. Reed and has some questions.
Okay, terrific. Thank you. Why don't we see this on your monitor, or Mr. Hanson? You can stay up at the podium, Mike.
Okay.
Becky, I'll get it.
So, yeah, Mr. Powers, a couple of things. First of all, we're here to discuss, you know, obviously, this is allowed in our zoning. We have there's some things I would like you to consider to talk about, that you would be willing to shorten the tower. What does that look like?
Okay, so the conversation only looks like this. The first two hearings with the planning and zoning and the community were not happy. And so we went back to Verizon and said, hey, what can we do to hopefully give something to the community or make it better? And honestly, the only thing I think that substantively we have to really give, other than like landscaping, it's not very interesting, is to lower the tower. So we got into a multi-week dialogue with Verizon about what is your bottom line? At what point would you not be able to meet your objectives based on height?
And that bottom line is?
120 feet.
And
I want to be honest, and I don't want anyone to say that I'm saying things that aren't true. So I want to say this: height is not always like off and on. Like, yes, it works, or no, it doesn't. In other words, a tower at 150 feet would have been very good for their objectives, because they would have been able to do technology that was meeting the needs of the immediate community and further away. But obviously, if you go from 150 to 120, it's not like there's a point where it just doesn't work unless we're below the trees and stuff. So, you know, it's a continuum. But they said 120 foot would be a big cut for them in terms of their hope for far away coverage, but they would still be able to meet their objective. I hope that didn't sound
Do you have anything?
How many meetings like this have you had? This is my first, so I'm sure.
You mean like this meeting?
Well, how many times have you addressed any of the different boards or commissions or other crowds?
At least 150 times.
No, I mean this particular neighborhood.
Oh, sorry. We had a planning commission meeting, which went at least 3 or 4 hours, and then we tabled it. Talent is probably better with the times than me, but we tabled it. We had a second meeting that lasted just about the same time.
There were two at the planning commission. This is the first one.
So have you gone to Verizon? Have you guys looked at other options at other locations?
At this point, this is the only location inside the search ring that we were given that we can possibly develop.
I don't think that we have the power to alter the location. What we have the decision to do here is to think about, first of all, it is allowed in our zoning code. Our scope is very narrow here. I want everyone to understand that in terms of what we can do. So we can't, you know, I mean, I could ask lots of questions about why won't that other tower be sufficient? But what we're really here to do is to look at what kinds of adaptations we should do that would make the public at least somewhat happy. So camouflage, you know, the look at the aesthetics of the tower. I mean, what kinds of things have you given them in terms of options, or talked to Talent about?
We haven't really had a dialogue about that, but I mean, it's tough at this height, 120 feet. Our options are unwieldy. I mean, so let me be specific. You see a monopine. It's a fake tree. 120 foot tree. I think in that area is going to look worse than trying to blend in with all of those power poles. There's a lot of power poles, and again, I counted 24 just standing at that intersection, just looking around. That's my opinion. But so 120 foot monopine, I don't know. I don't. It's possible, but I don't think it's the best idea.
Let me ask another question. the base of that tower is what by what? I mean, I couldn't read this,
Oh, I think the compound's 50 feet by 50
50
feet.
feet by 50 feet.
But the foundation is a totally different animal. You don't see a foundation, it's underground.
In as short as you can, tell me a little bit about your business model. What do you do? Why does Verizon contract you to do it rather than themselves? And then walk me through the cost of what it costs and how quickly you get paid back.
Cool, yeah, I like this. So let's start in the 1980s or whatever, in the 1990s. Wireless is a new thing, right? So all of the carriers that were getting into that business were basically competing with each other. AT&T's competing with Verizon and T-Mobile and whatever. They were building everything themselves. So everything from the storefront to the tower, the technology, the fiber, it was all like done, like AT&T would do all of that. They'd have different divisions that would do that, and they would converge in making this work, right? And they were also designing their own handsets. Fast forward another decade, the carriers started to try to basically peel off portions of the building of their process that weren't at their core. So one of the portions of the core, of the non-core parts of this business is it's the dumb stuff. It's concrete and steel and going through a planning and zoning process and getting building permits and putting fences in and getting power. That's not really their core business. So it was very easy for the carriers to find separate companies that would just do that. That's the beginning of a tower co. Atlas is a tower co. So we only do that. The other thing is...
Can I stop you there?
Yeah.
Does it have anything to do with shifting the liability? You know, Verizon's a huge company. They're a big, they could be responsible for a lot. Is it possible that it has anything to do with shielding them from the potential liability?
All I can do is tell you more facts. In terms of liability, Atlas and all of the vendors for the carriers basically have to have a lot of insurance because they force you to match their insurance in terms of liability issues. So everyone's insured that's in this commercial wireless industry. The wireless industry, as well as the construction industry generally, has a leaning towards using subs. And you can have theories about that, but that's just how it is in America. If you're building expensive stuff, you often use subcontractors. But Atlas Tower has $5 million or more in liability insurance and other insurance. Their insurance is a big deal, and we can't do business with these guys without being able to meet their demands, which are very high.
Talmadge, when we have a 150-foot tower, what's the radius, the safety radius we have?
The zoning regulations don't identify a certain multiplier for the radius, so we just use the height of the tower. So 150.
It looks like the tower, its location is pretty close to the road. That radius.
Yep.
But I'm looking at this picture here,
Yep.
and all the antennas are up top. So if the tower tumbled, these antennas would be rolling around in the road, potentially hitting some cars going by. They would shatter, right? They'd pieces.
Well, the towers are all designed sort of like crash zones in a car. In other words, there's this technology that's been like trademarked for a point. So imagine that all the bolts on the tower need a value, a shear value of, let's just call it 100. What they'll do is they'll make all of the bolts 125, and then they will very strategically make some of the bolts 100. And that way, if there was a cataclysmic issue, usually by car or plane, that's pretty much it, that it would crumble instead of falling like that. One other comment, just in terms of safety, because safety is a purview of the county. There is a specific tower code for making sure towers are safe not gonna fall over, be able to withstand winds and hurricanes and earthquakes and all of that. That's it's a standardized code, and it's very robust. And basically, the years of having guy wire, old over-air TV antennas falling over, those antennas are not what's being built today. In other words, modern towers, like the tower we're proposing to build here, is not going to fall over, but for some event that is impossible to engineer for, and that's the car or the airplane.
Mr. Chair, could I ask for a break for some, for the commissioners to get some legal advice?
Absolutely, but I do have one question before we break.
Sure.
You had said that you're trying to solve a problem.
Yeah.
Whose problem are you trying to solve?
Again, all I can tell you is Verizon has a problem with their network. Their network does not work the way they want it to work for their customers in this area. And so, who does that benefit? Yeah, obviously it sort of benefits, or it does directly benefit Verizon, but they are servicing customers. They're doing something for value, just like, that's what America is all about, is right? Doing something and getting paid for it, and then hopefully doing something good with that. It's not illegal to.
I understand, I just wanted to ask you, are we gonna take a little break and consult with?
Yes, I would request a break.
Can we take a quick little break?
5 minutes.
Are we gonna do it in open forum? Okay.
Are you asking for an executive
Yes.
session for legal
Yes.
advice? You can do that in the context of this hearing without separate notice because you are in a public hearing. And you can ask for legal advice pertaining to the hearing. But you still need to go through the process of moving to go into executive session.
Okay.
And it will be pursuant to 24/6.
That mean we should leave?
No, you don't have to leave. Mr. I move that we take a 5-minute break to meet with council pursuant to the Redvale WCS special use permit, special use 24-003.
Second, all in favor? Aye.
And because this will be attorney-client privilege communication for legal advice, no recording will be needed.
The public asked if they had to leave, right? We'll go back in the
How about we go back in the closet?
We'll be right back.
It's a storage.
We didn't get I'm gonna get to your question, don't worry.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, we're gonna reconvene. We're gonna reconvene here before we're gonna confer and deliberate with our county attorney on this, but before we do, I wanted to just ask a question. Mike? Came out of executive session, we're gonna resume our public hearing. Coverage maps, first, now second coverage as a result of the tower. Who submitted?
That was me. I was just wondering, those pictures, it showed the little green and a little bit of red on the first one. And then on the second one, it's all red. Is that the result of one tower?
I apologize, I said green at the beginning, but I realized when you showed them that it was, the red is the coverage. So in the first one, there's some red, but not a lot of red. And then the second page is a lot of red. The coverage they're getting on the first one is from some other tower somewhere else. It doesn't mean it's useful coverage, it's just that they can connect a phone there.
So your coverage will increase that much as it is on the second one with one tower?
Yeah, that's what they're trying to display visually. Yep.
I asked that the first meeting and I didn't get an answer. So.
And your comment was, it may be ordinary, but we live here and live and work here, and the poles, electric poles are part of our natural environment. She just wanted to make that.
Yeah, I just, it might be normal to him, but this is where we live and this is where we love, so.
I understand that. We all understand that. Okay, so we're gonna move into, we're gonna close the public comment, and we're gonna open deliberation. So we'll, in the eyes of the public, we're gonna confer with our county attorney, and she's gonna tell us what options we have. And they are very few.
Can I make a statement to the gentleman?
Yes.
You just closed public comment. You've closed public comment.
Oh, public comment.
I just wanted to let him know it wasn't personal. I don't.
I appreciate that, thank you.
Thank you, Hank.
He's just doing his job.
And you guys are to be commended. What a great, community you have here. All right.
Can you just end there while you?
No.
Oh, I thought you had questions, I'll sit down.
We're gonna deliberate in front of you guys with Marty, the county attorney. So Marty, could you please, this is difficult, and unfortunately, I think there's some law that puts certain limitations and restrictions on this. Could you explain that, please?
Federal law, the Telecommunications Act of 1996, as amended, preserves state and local authority over zoning and land use decisions related to cell phone towers, but places very specific limits on that authority. A local government may not regulate in a manner that prohibits or has the effect of prohibiting the provision of personal wireless service facilities, and must act on applications within a reasonable time, which has been established by the FCC regulation as 150 days for new towers, which in this instance has been extended with agreement from the applicant. The statute preempts local decisions based directly or indirectly on environmental effects of radio frequency emission, assuming that the provider is in compliance with FCC regulations for radio frequency emissions. The land use code, the zoning regulations for Montrose County also require that any tower comply with FCC regulations, and the county has the ability to enforce against any tower that is not in compliance with FCC regulations. A local government may regulate by limiting towers to certain zoning districts. In this instance, towers are allowed in this zoning district, establishing setback requirements and/or imposing aesthetic requirements. To the extent that FCC regulations are based on FAA recommendations, sometimes you can have certain lighting or painting that's required to make it conspicuous to aircraft, and those preempt local regulations. But again, in this case, federal law discretion of the county and of the decision of the Board of County Commissioners. The county does have regulations on towers. The county, at some point in the future, may modify those and increase some of the requirements, for example, for camouflaging. But at this time, the regulations are as they have been adopted. And so the tower has to comply with county regulations, existing county regulations, and the county also has to abide by federal law.
Any of the commissioners have a question of Marty or the planning commission, planning department?
No, I'm clear on that.
Basically, federal law has put us in a very difficult situation. And we're working on that to improve it, but we can't go backwards. We have to abide by what we have on the books today. And it's a tough decision, and I know what the impact has been on you guys. And I just wanted you to understand that before we take a vote and make a motion to, take a vote on this.
You
Yeah,
can
so-
deliberate, you can discuss, you
So-
can have a motion whenever one of you is ready to make a motion.
Yeah, I think that, I think the 120 is, does 30 feet make a difference in terms of visual or not? So that's one of the things that we could modify. The fall distance you were concerned about, Commissioner Majaris. So do you have anything that you'd like to chat about with that or require?
No. I'd like it to be retractable.
So I just wanted to, a couple things. It is really difficult to be up here in front of your friends and neighbors, and to realize that we have a zoning code that essentially allows this. And so I think I can speak for all three of us. It's no fun. But I am going to make a motion to approve. Let's see what I've got here. A motion to approve the Redvale WCF Special Use Permit SU 24-003 with the following conditions: that the reduction of the tower is 120 feet, that the fall radius, I think, Scott, you had some questions about the fall radius, that the fall radius is within our regulations as to safety. And that's my motion.
Okay. I will second it.
Mr. Chair, I have a question. There's a number of additional conditions that are probably good to safeguard the county from a few things, including number 3, that tower antennas equipment must meet or exceed current standards released by FCC. And the big one, I think, is the number 9, approval of this permit does not limit the board's power to terminate this permit. There's a finding of non-compliance with any of the conditions. Anyway, it's
So if you can clarify your motion, was your motion to accept staff's terms and conditions with the changes that you noted?
Do you want me to read those into the record?
Yes.
I will modify my motion to approve the special use permit with the following conditions as stated in the staff report. The permit shall be applicable only to the specific use of specific property for which it is issued. Any substantial alterations or revisions to the tower may need an additional special use permit. The special use permit shall run with the land. The tower, antennas, and equipment must meet or exceed the current standards and regulations of the FAA, the FCC, and any other agency with authority to regulate towers. Prior to construction of the facility, engineered plans per section 3D.4.A must be submitted to Montrose County and must demonstrate that the construction of the facility will be able to withstand gravity and wind loads. Prior to operation of the facility, a letter verifying that the tower has been constructed to carry gravity and wind loads as required by law, stamped by the licensed engineer, shall be submitted to the Planning and Development Department. The special use shall be conducted in conformance with Section 3D of the Montrose County zoning regulations. The development and operation of the facility shall be in conformance with all material representations included in the special use permit application submitted on the narrative site plan and applicable supplemental materials on file with the Planning and Development Department. The permit shall be applicable only to the specific use and specific property for which it was issued. The special use permit shall adhere to all requirements and permit requirements of any county, state, and federal agency. Approval of this permit does not limit the Board of County Commissioners' power to terminate this permit if there is a finding of noncompliance with the provisions of the permit, zoning regulations, conditions, and other laws of the county, state, or federal government. Prior to operation of the facility, the Planning and Development Department will inspect the site to verify compliance with all approved plans, acceptance by all appropriate county departments, and compliance with all conditions attached to the permit. Lighting of equipment and structures on the ground shall adhere to all lighting requirements and regulations found in Section 5 of the zoning regulations. And that concludes my motion. Right?
Along with the 120.
Along with the, yeah, along with what, are you, okay, along with the shorter height of the pet tower at 120 feet. Thank you.
I second the motion. We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposing?
The motion passes.
Shame on you. Shame on you.
Shame. What is the point of the commissioners having any control with the federal government?
It's
control.
They have their hands are tied, they can't do anything.
I know.
They can't. They can't do